Welcome to today's Community Conversations. My name is Aubrey, and I am a co-founder of the Community Sponsorship Hub, and I serve as the Director of Research and Practice. I'm excited to be stepping in for Besma today and moderating this important discussion. As national resettlement programs face new challenges, local action is more important than ever before. Today, we will be covering some key policy updates impacting refugees and other newcomer populations and discussing what this means for community sponsors and advocates. Next slide. Today's call will begin with a discussion on the current policy landscape and will be joined by our fabulous colleague, Meredith Owen Edwards. Meredith serves as the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy at Refugee Council USA. Following Meredith's presentation, we will learn more about current opportunities for you to get involved. During this part of the conversation, Katie Hagan, a program officer at the Community Sponsorship Hub, Neela Fieldman, Director of Higher Education Initiatives at CSH, will join me for a conversation around ways that you can get involved right now. And then finally, at the end of today's call, we'll reserve time to answer your questions and respond to your comments. Next slide. But before we begin, we have two quick housekeeping items. This call will be recorded. You will receive a copy of the recording through email after today's call. Also, as I mentioned, we will be answering your questions, and so throughout today's conversation, please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions or comments that you have. Next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, who will provide you with key updates to help you understand how federal legislation is playing out in state policy and what we can do together to protect and expand welcome. So over to you, Meredith.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you all. You can go to the next slide. I have a few things that I'm going to cover. The first is the status of the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program writ large. And so I have this slide, and we have some late-breaking additions to share with you, like live on the webinar. So first is that no refugees have been resettled through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program since September 30th, so for the last month. And that is for a few reasons. Over the course of which I will get to. Over the course of the year, we have seen the ways in which this administration has engaged in different kinds of attacks to prevent refugees from being resettled in the United States, both dismantling our nation's capacity to welcome, as well as corrupting the vital pathways to permanent protection. The refugee ban executive order that was signed on January 20th that suspended the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program is being challenged by the Pacito v. Trump litigation. But that litigation is currently stalled. The litigation had gone through a lot of different kinds of frameworks over the course of the summer to explore pathways to process refugees who had previously been conditionally approved for resettlement before January 20th. But over the course of the court intervention, that process was halted. And then since October 1st, as the government shutdown began, the administration had asked the court to stop or pause the proceedings from moving forward. The plaintiffs in that case, including individual plaintiffs and resettlement agencies, had replied saying that refugees across the globe continue to face imminent and irreparable harm as the refugee ban continues. But as of right now, the refugee ban remains very much in place. That brings me back to no refugees have arrived since September 30th. Okay, so what happened September 30th? On October 1st was the start of the federal fiscal year of 2026. US law requires that every year the administration must consult with Congress before the end of a given fiscal year and then sign after consultation a presidential determination on refugee admissions for the upcoming fiscal year. Both those things are required by statute to take place before October 1st. Neither of those things happened this time. Um, we know that congressional consultations have not happened and will not be scheduled until the government shutdown ends. We've also seen a number of news reports that I've linked to in this slide that indicate that the president had secretly signed a presidential determination on refugee admissions on September 30th that provided a historic low refugee admissions goal of 7,500 with a prioritization of Afrikaners over and above every other population of refugees, including the 120,000 who had been conditionally approved for resettlement as of January 20th. About almost 2 hours ago, in the Federal Register, um, that presidential determination of 7,500 was posted. It will be formally published tomorrow on Halloween, on October 31st. But we now have the official language of the presidential determination. Interestingly, the presidential determination um, um, specifies that it would not be implemented or published or like formalized until congressional consultations have taken place. But those congressional consultations still haven't happened. The committees of jurisdiction weren't even notified that the presidential determination had been signed, nor were they notified of the Federal Register notice. I can follow up with an RCUSA statement that just went live about 10, like 5-10 minutes ago in response to today's news. But this slide also includes our previous statements over the course of October, calling out the administration for violating US law and for completely ignoring other populations of concern, like Afghan allies who assisted the US mission, like Somalis, Sudanese, Ukrainians, all of the other populations who have been languishing as a result of the refugee ban. The last thing I'll note on this is that the language of the presidential determination that was secretly signed on September 30th referenced a majority of slots going toward Afrikaners, so and those facing, quote, unjust discrimination. Public reporting in the New York Times and some other outlets have indicated or provided a little bit of visibility into who those other populations could be who are facing unjust discrimination. And it's been specifically called out in the news that the White House is considering for resettlement Europeans who are members of far-right political parties, like AfD in Germany, which is known for its Nazi slogans and calling into question the Holocaust. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm gonna press pause on refugee admissions goal state of play and talk about some other issues we're experiencing. I did mention the government shutdown at one point on the last slide. I'm sure everyone has seen all of the news that we are experiencing a federal government shutdown and because Congress has not passed any kind of federal funding bill to continue funding federal agencies and federal programs. Right now, there's no end in sight. Over the last 48 hours, negotiations have, quote, ramped up, according to news reports, but there is not yet an actual plan in place. So it remains unclear when the shutdown will end. It remains unclear exactly what members of Congress have in mind in terms of reopening the federal government and addressing issues related to healthcare, addressing issues related to guardrails around how the administration operates programs, or without an understanding of how Congress plans on addressing the mass firings and furloughs of government workers. We know that programmatic threats have gotten worse and worse, and so we're on the cliff of the federal government um, no longer doling out funding for SNAP or food assistance programs. And so we have seen multiple states issue emergencies, states and counties, I should say, issue emergencies to draw down on state and local funds to support food and nutrition programs for their community members. Meanwhile, immigration enforcement is ongoing, and we have seen on the continued use of ICE and CBP targeting community members for detention and deportations. Okay. To round it out is another big topic, and that's around HR 1. Earlier this summer, Congress enacted the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or HR 1. I generally refer to it as HR 1 because I don't think it's one big beautiful bill personally. And we're at the point where states have undertaken efforts to begin implementing the changes enacted in that bill. First up is SNAP. I already talked about SNAP and what's going on with that program as a result of the shutdown, but there's another big bucket of issues that we are responding to. So one is state of play. The USDA and the Food and Nutrition Service is responsible for issuing guidance to states on how to modify SNAP eligibility for immigrant populations as a result of HR 1. HR 1 newly excluded in an unprecedented way refugees, asylees, and other humanitarian entrants from SNAP eligibility. That's obvious. However, HR 1 did not modify the portions of US law that exempt those populations once they get green cards from any SNAP waiting periods. So that means that states should ensure that once refugees and asylees get their green cards, that they should be eligible for SNAP right away and not subject to a 5-year bar or any other kind of waiting period. It's also of note that Afghan SIVs arrive as lawful permanent residents. So they arrive like with their green cards, so to speak. Technically, they don't receive them right away because they have to arrive here first, but you know what I mean. So, states are trying to decide how they want to like proceed with these SNAP waiting periods. Unfortunately, we have seen some states exclude refugees, asylees with green cards, and Afghan SIVs from SNAP by subjecting them to the waiting period. But we've also seen some states make decisions to ensure that they are able to get SNAP and not subject to the waiting periods. Deep breath. I have included a few different kinds of resources we've put together on this topic. It is weedsy, it is complicated, and very nuanced. So these resources include a fact sheet, legal analysis, and talking points that try to simplify what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. Bonk. Thank you. Okay. This slide is really just so that you have links to other things when you need them. States, so Um, a lot of states that are making decisions around SNAP modifications for eligibility are not necessarily going public yet or like formally publishing their guidance yet, although a couple have. We know quietly that there are a handful of states that we know are going to subject the populations like refugees and asylees with green cards and Afghan SIVs to the 5-year waiting period. That includes Oregon, Ohio. Ohio, that information is publicly available. Vermont, which, by the way, has a House Committee on Human Services hearing today on this very topic. Montana and Nebraska. Nebraska is the other one that's public. We know that some states are affirmatively planning to exempt our populations from the waiting period. So that's Iowa, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. And there are a lot of states waiting for federal guidance. You'll notice that my list here doesn't add up to 50, and that's because we don't know exactly what every single state, all 50 states are going to do. What we are asking is that states exempt these populations from any SNAP waiting periods. And if they can't make that determination, at least wait until the federal government issues their guidance. There's been a lot of media attention. And so I linked to the Vermont Digger investigation for Vermont, which I think is a really good resource if you're looking at it, not just in Vermont, but also other states. And then as the shutdown has progressed, shutdown related SNAP cuts have also hit the press. So we know that 25 states are suing the president for not drawing down on USDA's contingency fund that's supposed to manage emergencies like this and continue providing federal funding for SNAP for states. So they're suing because they chose not to do that. And then I linked to some examples of state and local emergency programs to provide food assistance to communities, and then some other media hits from ABC, NBC, and Axios, because NBC has a really good breakdown of what the different states are doing as a result of the shutdown and SNAP. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention a couple other components to HR 1. HR 1 also made it so that refugees, asylees, and other humanitarian entrants became ineligible for Medicaid and Medicare. Medicaid, I put in forthcoming because it's not going into effect right away, but it did go into effect for Medicare for new enrollees. And so RCUSA, in collaboration with Center for Medicare Advocacy, Justice and Aging, and NILC, jointly issued a FOIA request to the multiple federal agencies asking for more information around exclusions of eligibility for Medicare for immigrant populations. And there's a media hit in the Philly Inquirer to that end. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is my last slide. So what did I just say? Like, what does this all mean? How does this relate to your communities? We know that locally, there is a lot of support, ongoing support to continue welcoming newcomers. And the Refugee Advocacy Lab undertook a great polling effort with Refugees International and Data for Progress that documented the growing support for welcoming refugees, for welcoming asylum seekers. And so I would encourage you to go to the press release and the data to dig into the details, but I included here some highlights from that polling and some of the data analysis, and then community impact and ways to take action. The best way to take action right now is to make noise publicly. We need to make noise on a couple of different things. We need to make noise on the refugee admissions goal and the prioritization of this administration of Afrikaners over and above every other refugee population and refugees most at risk. So that's that first action alert that has sort of like a funny orange gray color going on. Um, and we need to continue to lift up for policymakers that states need to be making the right decision in protecting as many populations as possible to access SNAP and food assistance. That is that second action alert. I also included links for to sign up to receive our action alerts regularly. And we have a landing page called the Action Center on RCUSA's website that I linked to here, where you can always check out our most current action alerts. But I would say right now, like today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, the big important things is to contact your congressional leaders, state legislators, and local policymakers and tell them that our communities want to see our country resettle more refugees who are the most at risk, like Afghan allies, Sudanese, Somalis, Burmese, etc. And we want states to be making the right decision and protecting as many populations as possible against snap cuts. I will leave it there. Aubrey, you can move on to the next slide, and I will be in the chat function as folks have questions.
Thank you so much, Meredith. That was really helpful, and I think provides some resources and ways that people can take immediate action. And I know you all will be updating kind of steps around the PD and other ways that people can take action in your Action Alert Center. So really encourage folks to go log on to these links and find out more. So while USRAP, the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, has been indefinitely suspended, special immigrant visa holders have been able to travel and resettle in the United States. To support these individuals, in addition to populations who are already resettled, the Community Sponsorship Hub expanded our Sponsor Circle program to provide core and essential services to individuals and families. So now I'm going to turn over to my colleague Katie, who will be providing updates on this program.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am so excited to share a bit about how community members can take part in welcoming Afghan SIVs being resettled from overseas to the US through our Sponsor Circle program. So, this model was originally created so everyday people like myself, like you all, neighbors, friends, faith groups, local organizations can play a direct role in helping newcomers start their next chapter in the US. So, a sponsor circle is a group of at least 3 adults in the same community who commit to supporting a newcomer family for 90 days. Each group will provide core resettlement support like securing housing, helping with basic needs, finding employment, and ultimately guiding these families towards self-sufficiency. Your support can truly be the difference between a family feeling overwhelmed to feeling seen and welcomed. It includes everything from picking them up at the airport after long days and hours of travel, helping them again find the safe permanent housing, enrolling children in school, showing adults how to navigate the local grocery store, preparing a hot meal for their first night here, and everything in between and far from there. Sponsor circles also help with cultural orientation. So things like using public transportation, scheduling doctor's appointments, enrolling in public benefits, things even as like finding where to buy winter coats or things so small to you and I, such as how to do the self-checkout counter at like the local grocery store. Every one of these acts that probably seems small to you and I, they really come together and help families build this foundation of safety, dignity, belonging, and ultimately just feeling welcomed here. So, if you are interested to get started, your group will complete an application through our website, which also includes background checks. It includes completing a welcome plan and journey guide, and this document outlines how you'll support the family through the 90 days. And then we also ask that at least one member, but we encourage all members to complete the Sponsor Essentials training. And then you'll get all of that submitted. And then once you've been approved, you'll receive a certification email within a few days from our team. A lot of questions we get though is around like matching and how that works. And so on your application, you will note what size family you're ready to welcome, whether it be a single case or a family of four, or maybe you could welcome a family of 10, putting that pitch in there because we do need groups for larger families. But then once we have your preferences and once we have a potential match for your group, we will reach out to you. We'll send you the family's details, their travel timeline, and then you will have the opportunity to meet as a group to review the case and decide if it's a good fit. So nothing is automatic. You do have the chance to kind of discuss it with your group and come back to us. We recognize that every group has different capacity and readiness, and so we are able to accommodate that. Another question we often get around the matching is like, how soon can I expect my family to arrive? And matching timelines really do vary. Sometimes they happen in a very few days. It's a quick turnaround, rapid response. Other times there is a bit more time, it could be a few weeks, a month. It really depends on a lot of factors such as travel readiness, travel clearances, if a family needs exit permits, when those are issued, and then also just on some family preferences. But we communicate that with all of you all. So just to keep you updated on what we know on our side. And so then once a match is confirmed and your sponsor circle says, yes, we are ready to welcome this family, you will receive a formal email from our team that has the family's contact information. And so then this allows you to reach out to the family even before they arrive, typically through WhatsApp or email, to begin those introductions, but also just build that connection and get to know, that familiar face before they even get here. And then from there, after your family's arrival, your 90-day sponsorship officially begins. And so I know all of this sounds daunting, but fortunately we have a lot of great resources and partnerships in place to help. So first, every sponsor circle is connected with a sponsor circle umbrella or SCU, which is an organization that will provide ongoing guidance and support to you and your group throughout the 90-day sponsorship period. These SCUs, they can provide advice around fundraising, language support. They can also connect you to other groups that they've helped. And so this partnership ensures, you're not alone during this 90-day. They're here to answer your questions, share resources, and just make sure that you feel successful, but also ultimately then going back to the family, making sure they have the best services available. And then a couple other additional resources that I'm so excited to highlight or mention is the first one is the Airbnb.org grant. And so this provides 10 nights of temporary housing for newcomers. It can be a huge help as your sponsor circle finalizes long-term housing arrangements from when the family arrives. And then the other one is the Welcome.us Sponsor Fund. And we're so grateful for their partnership. They can offer $1,000 per newcomer, up to $7,000 for family. And these funds they go to your group. They help with essential costs like housing, security deposits, groceries, transportation, any of those costs that come, or these expenses that really come at the beginning. And I'm excited to share also that the Welcome.us Sponsor Fund has been extended through November 28th, which I believe is Thanksgiving. So you can continue to take advantage of this as you sign up and welcome newcomers through this fall and through the holiday season. And so again, just those two resources along with the SCUs, we're just so grateful. And again, we want to make sure you guys feel supported. And so we're just grateful for the Airbnb.org grant, the Welcome.us Sponsor Fund, and then obviously all of our SCUs that we've been working with. So in short, the sponsor circle model, it's really about all of us coming together to help newcomers. We want to create a welcoming path for Afghan SIVs to not only arrive here safely, but truly settle in, feel welcome, build connections, and again, become self-sufficient. I always say, just from my experience, even just a language barrier can be very difficult, but I love to share, like a smile goes so far. And I know from my experience welcoming newcomers, that smile just really changes. And so that's what we ask, in sponsor circles. It may feel very, very scary, but we have the resources, the model set up. And as long as you can share that smile, you will definitely get far with that. So if you do have any questions, please drop them in the chat or we'll get to them at the end of this session. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Aubrey.
Thank you so much, Katie. As you've heard from Meredith and now Katie, there have been so many changes to resettlement, and with US RAP being suspended, really the only way for newcomers to come to the United States are those that have the special immigrant visas. So the Sponsor Circle program provides such an essential service and support for newcomers who are able to travel and authorized to travel right now. And it's just one of the multiple ways that you can get involved. And so now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Neela, who is going to provide you with information about a new program that we're launching to support refugee background students with higher education initiatives. Over to you, Neela. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. And I'm really excited to speak to all of you. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about CSH's new High Education Access Program for students of refugee background. So this is really a program that is meant to support refugee youth who are already in our communities, already resettled to the United States. CSH's High Education Access Program for students of refugee background is really meant to remove the barriers that, as we know, very often prevent students who are unfamiliar with the US higher education system and their families are not familiar with the US higher education system from pursuing an undergraduate degree at a US college or university. We often say that it's not really a traditional scholarship program, so that's why we called it Access Program. Because the goal is to connect participating colleges and universities with qualified students who are already in their communities and who meet the colleges or universities admissions criteria. So we really want to be that link after high school or coming to the United States and then connecting young refugees who very often desire to get a post-secondary degree in the United States and really help them sort of like make that jump into higher education. And in doing so, also improve, their opportunities and their contributions to their new home communities. Next slide. We would have loved to roll this program out in all 50 states, but we wanted to make sure that we do this in a really sustainable and efficient manner. So we decided on 18 states, and we hope that after a successful launch in year one, we can sort of like build out this map and add more dark blue spots to the map. But for right now, we are working with students and institutions in Arizona, California, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Washington State, and Wisconsin. And so when I say we're working with, it's still a fairly new program. We launched the program in early September, and we actually just closed the application deadline for the students yesterday. So it's a really exciting new opportunity for all of us at CSH and our partners to provide more hands-on support to refugee populations who already reside in our communities. Next slide. So what do we offer or who do we support with the program? As I mentioned, when I say students of refugee background, we specifically look at students who have arrived in the United States under the United States Refugee Admissions Program, also called USREP, or special immigrant visa holders, the SIV visa holders. Anyone who arrives who participates must have arrived in the United States on or before January 1st, 2021. And that is really out of a desire to support those who we consider more recent arrivals in the United States. So again, those who may not have completed any high school in the United States or maybe just a few years and whose families are also not familiar with the higher education system. You just saw the map of the 18 states. So to apply to the program, everyone must be a resident in one of the 18 pilot states, and they must have lived in that state for a minimum of 1 year at the time of enrollment in fall 2026. We often get questions about sort of, why not asylees, why not humanitarian parolees, or sort of the state residency. And a lot of these requirements are very practical because we want to make sure that the program is financially sustainable and feasible both for students, but also the welcoming institutions. because as you may know, there are certain limitations on who qualifies for state and federal financial aid and who qualifies for in-state tuition. And that, of course, makes a really big difference on the price tag, both for the students, but also the universities. Students who apply must be between 18 to 30 years old on or by August 1st, 2026. And as I mentioned on a previous slide, we're really looking to support students who want to pursue an undergraduate degree, meaning a bachelor's or an associate's. This program is not for those who would like to do a master's or a PhD. And again, there's two main reasons for that, which is one, we would like to make sure that we provide access to that first post-secondary degree. And then again, the financial model heavily relies on eligibility for Pell Grants. And if anyone has already completed an undergraduate degree, either in the United States or abroad, then they do not qualify for Pell Grants anymore. And then last but not least, everyone who applies to the program must have either a US high school degree or an equivalent from another country. But they can also be current high school seniors as long as they graduate by June 15th, 2026. And we do also accept applications from individuals who do have a GED. Next slide. So I promised to keep this short, so that's my last slide. What do we offer to students? As I mentioned, we don't consider this a scholarship program, but we do only work with institutions who can confirm and commit to ensuring that students will not have to pay anything out of pocket for their tuition or any mandatory fees. And that is really typically a mix of utilizing eligibility for in-state tuition, for state and federal financial aid, but also providing work-study opportunities to students, and then they can use those earnings to cover some, any remaining tuition balance, scholarships, waivers, grants. So anyone who participates in the program will not have to pay anything out of pocket for their tuition or mandatory fees. We also support academic application support because we do know that if you're not familiar with the US higher education system, a Common App and all of the supporting documents can be really daunting. So we are supporting students in that process and they submit the applications to us. And then what we do is we apply the applications to the admissions offices of participating institutions. So that is what we mean by academic matching and placement. So we want to make sure that every student who applies to the program will get admission at a college or university in their community or their state, or if we have, for example, private institutions participating who can offer sort of like a full ride scholarship, then we would also consider those placements out of state. We are providing a 6-month mentorship component, just recognizing how important it is for students to just familiarize themselves more with the US higher education system, expectations in the American classroom, but we will also help students fill out FAFSA and just really guide them through all of the processes prior to enrollment. And then once students are enrolled and they're on campus, you just heard Katie speak about the Sponsor Circle program. So very much like the Sponsor Circle program, we're asking all institutions to identify 3 staff or faculty on campus who can serve as a campus support group. So really guiding students, especially in that first year on campus, through any questions around financial aid, academic supports, but also career development. So if you're listening to this and you're working at an institution in one of those states that you just saw on the screen, or you do know someone who works at an institution, we're really looking for community colleges and then private and public 4-year institutions. I can put the program's email address in the chat, and then please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you may have about the program or any ideas about campuses that might be interested in participating. And with that, I'm going to give it back to Aubrey.
Thank you so much, Neela. You've now heard how you can get involved in sponsoring newly arriving individuals and families and ways to support individuals of refugee background in the US. Now I'd like to turn it over to a new program we're launching that provides opportunities for you to get involved in supporting refugees and other individuals from displaced backgrounds who are already in the United States. The Community Sponsorship Hub received an award to serve as a service provider under the Office of Refugee Resettlement's Preferred Communities program. Through this award, CSH is partnering with the Welcoming Initiative for Newcomers, WIN, and 5 local affiliate organizations who will provide intensive case management. In-person intensive case management services will be provided through these affiliates in 5 locations: Tucson, Arizona, Houston, Texas, Mobile, Alabama, the greater kind of Northern Virginia area, and Syracuse, New York. In addition to these in-person services, the Community Sponsorship Hub, in partnership with WIN, will provide virtual case management services across the United States. Now, our approach centers on using community sponsorship to support case managers and the individuals enrolled in receiving additional supports and wraparound supports during kind of their intensive case management period. So we'll be partnering with sponsors to support these intensive case management services, supporting refugees with the most urgent and complex needs. Next slide. So you may be asking, what is intensive case management? The intensive case management program through the Preferred Communities provides intensive individualized support to refugees and other newcomers who face unique challenges. These may include medical, mental health, and legal needs. So through this program, our services will include first, an intake assessment for eligibility, second, development of individualized case plans from a case manager, referrals to housing, healthcare, and legal services, in addition to economic mobility resources and public benefit support. This will be tailored based upon the needs of each case. Also have access to expanded cultural orientation to support longer-term cultural awareness and integration. And then finally, and most importantly, access to community sponsors through our program. We're just launching this program, so if you're interested, please keep an eye out on our website with more information as it becomes available. Next slide. Okay, so we've gone through a lot today, from kind of the policy context to active ways you can get engaged both in advocacy, but also through community sponsorship. Now we want to answer your questions, so we're going to open it up to your questions, if you can place them in the Q&A feature. We've also had some questions already answered. So while you're putting the questions in here, I do just want to kind of identify a couple of things that were already asked. So the presidential determination and information around that came out today. The Community Sponsorship Hub is reviewing this, and active ways that you can get involved right now are by connecting with kind of the resource that Meredith has put in here around the action alerts for RCUSA, and I think she's pulling another link. This is hot off the press, so a lot is kind of being developed, but you can always go to Refugee Council USA's website and their Action Alert Center, and you'll get the most up-to-date information there. For those of you who may have gotten involved in community sponsorships, such as the Sponsor Circle program for Afghans, Ukrainians, Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, or Venezuelans, there is a streamlined kind of process for being certified to support in this current moment. So if you go onto the sponsorcircles.org website, you'll be able to find out more about that accelerated pathway to get involved. Neela, I don't know, I think you answered it in the chat, but I don't know if you want to answer any questions around kind of the pilot states.
Yeah, I did respond to the question on how those states were selected, and I will be really honest. We said we're going to have 10 states, and then you can see that we have 18 states because it was really hard to narrow it down to 10 states. But we just, of course, on our end, have only so much capacity. And we wanted to make sure that we can start with the states where we have the best relationships between CSH and our partners, and the previous higher education programs that we worked on, combined with, of course, knowing where a large number of refugees and SIVs resettled over the last 4+ years. So that is how we identified those 18 states. But then we have been working on higher education programming for refugee background students for quite some time. But this is the first program that we implement solely for individuals who are already in the United States. So again, this is a pilot program, the very first year, and our ambition and desire certainly is to expand the programming to additional states in the future.
Okay, so I'm gonna I don't know if folks can see the updated link that Meredith shared, but I'm putting that now in the Q&A answered feature. And the other thing I just want to draw your attention to is if you go to RCUSA's homepage, you can click on at the top, there's kind of different options, a menu, and if you click on the Action Center, you will find kind of updates and a lot of information about like just initiatives and resources as they are occurring. So I'm putting that in the chat as well. I think we have some questions about just more generally about today's slide deck and PowerPoint. So you will be emailed today's PowerPoint, or you'll be emailed today's recording. It's also going to go on our YouTube channel, so you can find it there and share it out as well. A lot of this information, especially around the policy context, is developing. So I think kind of, again, there's a lot of useful resources there that you can go back to, but would encourage you to also just go to RCUSA's website, and throughout the day and throughout the week, they will be updating their website as more information comes available. And if you're not already doing so, please follow us and RCUSA on social media so you can get kind of the most up-to-date information as well. I think I have answered all the questions in the chat. Again, we have kind of different email addresses here that you can reach out to if you have questions about the higher education program or the Sponsor Circle program. Our website, both communitysponsorshiphub.org and sponsorcircles with an s.org, are up to date with information. You should keep an eye if you're interested in the Preferred Communities Intensive Case Management Program on the Community Sponsorship Hub's website. We will be launching and kind of updating information as we go live with this program. But for now, we've got just a bit of a soft launch today, but more information will be coming out in the next month and ways that you can get involved through that program. I'm going to wait just one moment and see if there are any other questions. I think there's a question in the chat around eligibility of Afghans that have green cards and their families, so U.S. ties. I think just to note right now, the only individuals who are able to travel to the United States are those that have special immigrant visas. So unfortunately, not everybody will be able to travel. So I think it's very case specific. If they have a special immigrant visa, they are able to travel. I think that's all the questions. I want to just offer an opportunity if there's anything else our panelists, any parting words or thoughts based on any of the questions that our panelists would like to say. If not, again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for being here. Our next community conversations will be in December, if I'm correct, Katie, December 18th, I believe. So please keep an eye on our website and information around that. We really appreciate you all joining us today. We know it's a very busy day. And